approach with Mexico to deepen our bilateral trading relationships, and we are pursuing more aggressive strategies throughout Asia. We have the resources the world needs. 85% of our energy is clean. We're one of the world's largest LNG exporters. We are diversifying our trading relationships and our security partnerships. We signed the most comprehensive agreement with the European Union. We are top 5 in 10 of the world's most important critical minerals.
You will not believe what Canada's Prime Minister just said about Donald Trump and why the entire room erupted in laughter. That was the line echoing across headlines after Prime Minister Mark Carney walked into the Council on Foreign Relations in New York and delivered what may be the boldest speech of his career. In front of a room filled with diplomats, business leaders, and academics, Carney cracked a joke about Trump's trade policies that drew waves of laughter. But behind the humor was a serious warning. Canada, he declared, would not wait for Washington's approval any longer. It would chart its own course, and in the process, reshape the balance of power in North America. Carney opened with a blunt assessment. "This is not a transition," he said, his voice steady. "This is a rupture." He explained that America had shifted from multilateral cooperation to transactional bilateral deals, abandoning the very system it built after World War II. He warned that technological change was erasing America's geographic advantages, while conflict now extended from cyberspace to outer space. To Canadians watching live streams back home, the message felt like a wake-up call. For decades, Ottawa had lived in Washington's shadow. Now Carney was offering a blueprint to break free. The moment that caught fire online came when Carney, with a smirk, delivered his now famous jab. President Trump has done more to push Canada closer to Europe than any Canadian Prime Minister ever could. Laughter filled the room, but the meaning was clear. Trump's tariffs, his posts calling Canada the 51st state, and his aggressive demands had backfired. Instead of bending to Washington, Canada was accelerating its pivot to Europe and Asia. Within hours, the clip was trending on social media, with Canadian users flooding comment sections with pride and Americans debating whether Trump's strategy was unraveling. Yet Carney's speech was not built on jokes alone. It rested on 3 pillars: build strength at home, diversify abroad, and defend Canadian values. At home, Carney highlighted the One Canadian Economy Act passed on June 26, 2025. This law eliminated interprovincial trade barriers that had frustrated small and medium enterprises for decades. A Toronto logistics owner told reporters, "We can now move goods from Ontario to Alberta without tripping over duplicate standards. Since July, our shipments are up 20% every month. For the first time, SMEs felt Ottawa was breaking down walls instead of building them." In Saskatchewan, a mid-sized grain exporter reported that eliminating duplicate provincial inspections cut their costs by nearly 15%. The owner told local media, "Before, I had to pay double fees just to move grain across borders. Now I can ship directly to Ontario buyers without delays, and that margin keeps our farm alive." Stories like this are now common, showing that policy changes are translating into concrete survival for family businesses. Defense was another pillar of the speech. For years, Canada had been accused of free-riding on NATO. Carney turned that narrative on its head, announcing that Canada will hit NATO's 2% of GDP defense target by 2026, 5 years earlier than planned. More strikingly, he laid out a path to 5% of GDP by 2035, with 3.5% for direct defense and 1.5% for defense industrial capacity. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg quickly praised the pledge, calling it a clear sign Canada is stepping up. In provinces like Nova Scotia, where shipbuilding jobs depend on defense contracts, the announcement sparked immediate optimism. The defense buildup is also reshaping local economies in Halifax and beyond. Halifax shipyards have announced plans to hire 2,000 additional workers over the next 3 years, with unions hailing it as the largest expansion since the Cold War. One union leader said, "For the first time in years, our young people are coming back to work here instead of leaving for Toronto or Calgary. It is a generational shift." Diversification abroad was the second pillar. Carney cited the June 2025 signing of a comprehensive defense and economic pact with the European Union, the most ambitious deal Ottawa has ever signed with Europe. Only 3 months later, Canada announced a plan to boost exports to Indonesia, aiming for tariff-free access for 95% of Canadian products. Within 12 months, Trade Minister Maninder Sidhu explained, Our agriculture, aerospace, and telecom sectors are ready to scale in Southeast Asia. This deal doubles our opportunities. For Canadian farmers who had struggled under United States tariffs, markets in Jakarta and Seoul suddenly looked like lifelines. Carney also confirmed that United States-Canada trade talks are moving into a formal USMCA review. Rather than pleading for exemptions, Ottawa is preparing to renegotiate from a position of strength. At the same time, Carney struck a pragmatic tone toward China, where tensions remain high over canola and electric vehicles. In my experience, he said, China is run by engineers. They are sincere on climate and know the solutions. Canada will work with anyone serious about solving global challenges. His words signaled a sharp contrast with Trump's combative approach. Defending Canadian values was the third pillar. Carney described pluralism, diversity, and sustainability as strengths, not burdens. He pointed to Canada's role as the largest per capita donor to Ukraine, its cooperation with Nordic and Baltic states on Arctic sovereignty, and its leadership in the G7 Critical Minerals Buyers Club. That club is aimed at reducing dependence on China. These were not slogans. They were measurable contributions, backed by billions in spending and international agreements. Canada is building resilience, he said, not just for today, but for decades to come. At home, reactions poured in. Reactions. In Sudbury, Ontario, where nickel mining dominates the local economy, Mayor Paul Lefebvre told CBC, "We are tired of being pawns in someone else's game. Nickel is critical for electric vehicles, and Canada must treat it like a strategic asset." Carney's speech proves Ottawa finally understands. Nickel production stood at 158,000 tons in 2023, with nearly half shipped to the United States. For Sudbury residents, it felt revolutionary. Hearing their livelihood framed as global leverage carried weight. Nickel's role in electric vehicle batteries has made Sudbury a strategic hub far beyond Canada. Automakers from Tesla to Volkswagen rely on Canadian nickel for supply stability. While the European Union has quietly signaled interest in long-term contracts, economist Claire Martin warned that even a 10% shift in exports, if Canada redirected even 10% of its nickel exports from the United States to Europe, it could shift global battery pricing overnight. SMEs across the country welcome the changes. A Vancouver software entrepreneur said her firm was losing PhDs to Silicon Valley every year. If Carney can make it attractive for them to stay, we will build our own ecosystem here, she explained. Canada produces some of the world's top AI and quantum talent, yet much of it migrates south. Carney's pledge to reform visa and retention policies drew cheers from tech hubs in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Even opposition figures found it difficult to attack. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre admitted, on NATO spending and Arctic sovereignty, Carney is doing what past governments promised, but never delivered. He cautioned about fiscal risks, but his words reflected a reluctant respect. For a politician known for sharp criticism, this was a rare concession. Ordinary Canadians voiced their support too. In Winnipeg, hydro engineer Rachel Morris pointed out that Canada exported nearly $6 billion of hydroelectricity to the United States in 2024 alone. We have powered American homes for decades, she said. But Carney is right. We can't depend on one customer forever. Diversifying markets is survival, not betrayal. Her comment echoed broader concerns that over-reliance on Washington leaves Canada vulnerable. Global media noticed. The Guardian called the European Union Pact a historic move that places Ottawa at the heart of Europe's defense future. AP News highlighted Canada's early NATO target as a wake-up call to Washington. Reuters described the Indonesia deal as a significant step to diversify non-United States trade. Bloomberg analysts warned that United States auto and steel sectors could face major shocks if Canada deepens Asian ties. Collectively, the reports painted a picture of a middle power suddenly acting like a confident global player. Carney underscored his case with numbers. 40% of the world's listed mining companies are headquartered in Canada. Canada produced $124 billion in oil exports to the United States in 2023, representing 97% of its total oil trade. Natural gas exports to America reached nearly 8 billion cubic feet per day. Canada is the third largest hydroelectric producer, the fifth largest gold producer, and a leading exporter of aluminum and potash. For decades, these resources flowed quietly south. Now, Carney is reframing them as strategic leverage. Without Canadian energy and minerals, he said, the United States economy would face serious trouble. The scenario is not hypothetical. Alberta's Environment Minister Rebecca Schultz recently traveled to Tokyo to pitch Canadian liquefied natural gas. Japanese refiners like JERA and INEOS expressed strong interest. South Korean firms, including GS Caltex, have already signed preliminary agreements. Asia is our growth market. Schultz declared, Canada will be a reliable partner if even a portion of Canadian oil and gas shifts from the United States to Asia. The ripple effects in American refineries and consumer markets would be immediate. Trump's defenders argue that Carney is undermining decades of partnership. But for Canadians, the provocation has been relentless. Trump's 25% tariffs on Canadian steel, his Truth Social posts calling Justin Trudeau governor of the great state of Canada, and his push to brand Ottawa as America's 51st state have left scars. For many, hearing Carney turn that narrative into a punchline felt liberating. The laughter in New York was not just about humor. It was a declaration of independence. In his closing, Carney turned from jokes to cold facts. Canada is doubling defense spending. Canada is signing pacts with Europe and Asia. Canada is investing in AI and clean energy. Canada is leading on climate and critical minerals. And above all, Canada will not be dependent on the United States. Canada stands tall, he said. Canada will not be pushed around. The speech has already begun shifting public sentiment. A September 2025 survey from the Angus Reid Institute found that 68% of Canadians support Carney's push to diversify away from the United States. That number was up from just 42% in early 2024. Among small businesses, 71% said the removal of interprovincial trade barriers has helped them compete, while 54% believe Asia will be Canada's most important export market by 2030. These numbers underscore why Carney's words resonated far beyond Washington. For Canadians, it was a moment of pride. For Trump's camp, it was a warning. And for the world, it was proof that Canada's Prime Minister is emerging as one of the most respected global leaders of the decade. The clip of Carney joking at Trump's expense may dominate social media, but history may remember this speech as the day Ottawa declared it would never again be Washington's junior partner. The rupture has arrived, and Canada intends not just to survive, but to thrive.
President Trump says the United States needs Greenland for international security.
Said he would tariff Denmark at a very high level if it does not give Greenland to the United States.
What if I told you that America, the so-called superpower of the world, just lost control of the Arctic without a single shot being fired? And the winner wasn't China or Russia, but Canada, armed only with contracts, calculators, and quiet strategy. That is exactly what is unfolded by September 17, 2025, and it may go down as one of the most humiliating chapters in U.S. foreign policy. While Donald Trump was busy posting midnight rants about Greenland being America's next real estate deal of the century, Canadian diplomats and businessmen in cheap suits were quietly executing the biggest Arctic power shift in modern history. And now Washington is left scrambling, its credibility melting away as fast as the ice it once thought it could dominate. The scale of what just slipped through America's fingers is staggering. Beneath Greenland's ice lies nearly $50 trillion worth of critical resources: molybdenum, niobium, graphite, and rare earth metals that are indispensable for fighter jets, hypersonic missiles, smartphones, electric vehicles, and even NASA's satellite systems. To put that in perspective, this mineral wealth surpasses America's entire annual GDP. Former Danish Prime Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen once warned in 2020 that control of Greenland is control of the future. But in Washington, the warning went unheeded. Instead of sober strategy, Trump's obsession with tariffs and his public tantrums about buying Greenland alienated allies and created the very opening Ottawa needed. Back in 2019, when Trump first floated the idea of buying Greenland like it was a golf course, he was laughed off the world stage. But behind the laughter, intelligence briefings made clear how serious the Arctic had become. Morten Bodskov, then Denmark's defense minister, described Greenland as a strategic hinge between North America and Europe. Yet Trump canceled a state visit after being called absurd,
canceled a planned state visit to Denmark,
proving to allies that Washington's Arctic policy was more theater than strategy. By contrast, Canada's Mark Carney, former central banker turned statesman, quietly played chess. Instead of chasing headlines, he worked with mining executives and Arctic leaders, building relationships and locking in deals. As Carney told a closed-door meeting in Ottawa earlier this year, the 21st century is being written in the Arctic, and Canada will hold the pen. By early 2024, the groundwork was set, Canadian firms like Greenland Resources Incorporated proposed a 30-year partnership to extract molybdenum, valued higher than gold because of its role in jet engines and missile guidance systems. The genius was in the structure. Profits flowed directly to Greenland's treasury, bypassing Washington entirely. For the first time, we felt like equals rather than a colony, said Greenland's Prime Minister Mutby Agade in an interview with Politiken. At the same time, Amaroq Minerals revived the Nalunak gold mine with backing not just from Nordic funds but ironically from U.S. venture capital. As one former State Department official admitted anonymously to The Atlantic in June, we were drawing invasion maps while Canada was drawing contracts. The result was a $3 billion Arctic alliance between Canadian, Nordic, and Greenlandic ventures. Every ounce of molybdenum, gold, and rare earths was now tied up in long-term deals with Europe and Asia. U.S. defense contractors immediately felt the squeeze. Lockheed Martin froze development of its hypersonic missile program. Raytheon executives were caught cold calling Canadian suppliers, begging for components. Even NASA admitted in a September 2025 report to Congress that its satellite program faced critical material constraints. A Pentagon source described the mood bluntly. We didn't just lose resources, we lost credibility. Ordinary Americans are already feeling the ripple effects. According to the National Association of Manufacturers, prices for advanced alloys have surged 27% since March 2025, raising costs for small machine shops in states like Ohio and Michigan. One SME owner, David Kramer of Kramer Precision Tools in Toledo, told NPR this month, "We can't even bid competitively anymore. Canada locked in the raw materials, and we're left fighting over scraps." Farmers, too, are anxious, as modern combines and irrigation systems increasingly rely on imported electronic components that use rare earths. "It feels like the rug got pulled out from under us," a soybean farmer from Iowa. Washington was yelling on Twitter, and meanwhile Canada was signing the deals. Greenland's resistance only amplified America's humiliation. With a population of just 56,000, the island rejected Trump's push to annex or control it. In February 2025, Denmark's parliament declared that any coercion against Greenland would be considered an attack on NATO itself. That forced European capitals to circle the wagons, effectively treating Washington as the aggressor. French President Emmanuel Macron said in March, "Europe will defend the sovereignty of Greenland as firmly as we defend the sovereignty of Paris or Berlin." Even Poland, one of America's staunchest allies, quietly shifted position. A survey by Warsaw's Institute of Public Affairs in April showed 61% of Poles now favored European solidarity over U.S. alignment in Arctic policy. The irony is painful. Trump claimed to be the ultimate dealmaker, yet America walked away empty-handed while Canada, long dismissed as the little brother, became indispensable. By mid-2025, Greenland's parliament passed a sweeping law requiring all foreign mining firms to hire locals, build infrastructure, and channel profits into a sovereign wealth fund. Schools, hospitals, airports, and even new ports are being financed not by Danish subsidies but by Canadian brokered mineral revenues. As Agade declared in August, "We are no longer dependent. We are independent in all but name." For Greenlanders, this was liberation. For Washington, it was humiliation. Meanwhile, the numbers tell the story. Canadian exports of rare earth elements surged 43% year-on-year in the first half of 2025, according to Statistics Canada, with most bound for Germany and Japan. The trans-Arctic shipping route through Greenlandic waters, once forecast by Yuba naval planners as a future American highway, is now dominated by joint Canadian-Nordic ventures. Maritime tracking data from Lloyd's List shows that as of September, 68% of new Arctic shipping contracts were signed with companies headquartered in Ottawa or Copenhagen, not Washington. "The United States is no longer a serious player in the Arctic economy," said Professor Michael Byers, an Arctic law expert at the University of British Columbia. "Canada has turned polite diplomacy into raw leverage. This quiet revolution even reshaped NATO itself. In July, European defense ministers met in Brussels and agreed to treat Arctic security as part of their core agenda. But notably, the U.S. was excluded from certain sessions concerning resource coordination. A senior EU diplomat told Reuters, "The trust is gone. We cannot rely on Washington to respect alliances when its leader openly threatens partners." On the streets, ordinary Canadians see this as vindication. A poll by Angus Reid in September found that 71% of Canadians now believe their country outsmarted the United States in Arctic policy, while only 19% believe the U.S. remains a trustworthy ally. For small businesses in Canada, the boom is real. One SME, Northern Lights Logistics in Halifax, reported a 120% increase in shipping contracts tied to Arctic mineral exports this year. "We've gone from near bankruptcy to expanding our fleet," said CEO Marie Tremblay. "It's surreal that American missteps created this opportunity for us. In Greenland itself, local entrepreneurs are thriving. Coffee shops in Nuuk are buzzing with young workers hired by mining firms, and local contractors are booked years in advance to build new housing and infrastructure," as one Greenlandic shopkeeper put it to CBC. "Trump talked about buying us. Canada gave us jobs. Even America's allies in Asia are recalibrating." Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry announced in August that 22% of its rare earth imports now come through Canadian Greenlandic channels. South Korea signed a 5-year strategic agreement with Amarok Minerals to secure gold and rare metals for its semiconductor industry. These moves further isolate Washington. As South Korean Trade Minister Ahn Duk-gyun bluntly said, "We cannot risk supply chain instability from U.S. politics. Canada offers stability." It was a devastating statement from a key Pacific ally. In Washington, the political fallout is brutal. Senate Democrats accuse Trump of undermining NATO, while Republicans are split between defending his bold vision and criticizing the chaos. Senator Mitt Romney told the Washington Post last week, "We have managed to turn allies into adversaries and neighbors into rivals. This is the opposite of America first. It's America alone." The U.S. Chamber of Commerce released a September report estimating that the loss of secure Arctic resource access could cost the American economy 480,000 jobs over the next decade, particularly in aerospace, defense, and high-tech manufacturing. For a president who promised jobs, this is catastrophic. At the Pentagon, the mood borders on panic. Analysts warn that without access to Greenlandic molybdenum and rare earths, America's hypersonic missile program could face a 5-year delay. NASA officials testified before Congress on September 10th that critical satellite launches may be postponed into 2026. "This is a national security emergency," said Representative Adam Smith, ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. "We are watching Canada rewrite the rules of power while America tweets," but Carney himself remains measured. In an August interview with the Globe and Mail, he simply said, "We didn't conquer the Arctic. We earned it." The final insult came not from Ottawa or Copenhagen, but from Greenland's own people. In September, their parliament voted to issue their first sovereign Arctic bonds, backed by mineral revenues and underwritten by European banks. The offering was oversubscribed within hours, for a tiny nation once dependent on Danish subsidies. It was a declaration of financial independence. "This is the start of our future," said Finance Minister Pelle Broberg. Meanwhile, Trump continued to rant at rallies about buying Greenland for cheap, seemingly oblivious to the fact that Greenland had just bought its freedom instead. The Arctic is no longer a frozen backwater. With ice melting and new shipping lanes opening, it is the Silk Road of the 21st century. Whoever secures partnerships here doesn't just gain influence, they own the future of global trade, energy, and security. Russian and Chinese analysts are celebrating America's humiliation, but the real winner is quiet. Underestimated Canada. They didn't raise a furrow, fire a shot. They asked a simple question: "What do you want?" And by listening to Greenland, they outmaneuvered the most powerful military machine in history. As one NATO official admitted privately, "It is the most polite coup in modern history." The lesson is clear. Empires don't collapse because of enemy bombs. They collapse because of arrogance. America believed tanks and tariffs would always outweigh contracts and partnerships. Canada proved otherwise. Respect builds empires. Threats destroy them. And on September 17, 2025, 56,000 Greenlanders revoked America's license to lead in the Arctic and handed it to Canada. The so-called King of Deals is left with nothing but humiliation, while Canada quietly becomes the indispensable empire of the North.